What is up, everybody? Welcome to this video. So today what I want to go through is what I would do if I was starting from scratch or $0, having built a $16 million in sales, $500K a month Ecom brand from the ground up. So basically taking the lessons that I've learned, what are the probably three most important things to be able to take into the next business if I had to start from scratch, which is something we're looking at all the time and something that we're speaking with business owners all the time as well. So just before we get underway, my brother and I started an e-commerce business. We now do $500K a month, $6 million revenue last year. We now help other e-com brands scale their own revenues to $100K a month and beyond. So if you're interested in scaling, if you're serious about scaling, have a chat with us, book an appointment below, jump in the Facebook group, and let's get acquainted. So let's just jump into this video. So we've learned so many things over the last 10 years. We basically, in the first 12 months to 2 years, learned anything we could learn and more in real life, away from, college, university education. It was like doing an MBA in the first basically 12 months of being in business. And anyone who runs a business, can relate to that. And so if we had to start from scratch, there's so many things that we've learned along the way. We had to really delineate between what has been the most effective things, what has really pushed the needle up versus those that, were just a trial that we figured, weren't going to actually move our business forward, right? And so the very first thing that comes to mind when we're starting from an idea or from scratch is actually having something like a product that scratches your own itch. This is something that we learned from, Tim Ferriss in the 4-Hour Work Week, and something we took very, very seriously to start our brand. This is what I would do again. Find something that scratches your own itch. That means create something, source something that you would use yourself. All right. So in the case of us, it's cold pressed juice cleansing. Cold pressed juice being the product, we drink it ourselves. We started a business around this concept. There were challenges that we faced in the production process, which basically was our itch, in the sense of we wanted to make it easier and scalable for people. And that enabled us to find a market beyond that. But the point being is that if you have a problem or a desire or a need for a product, it's very, very, very likely that there will be a mass market out there for you. We felt very niche, almost accidentally. We went into this very, very niche market where we weren't sure how many people were actually in it. But by fulfilling a need for ourselves, we soon realized how big this market actually was. 100 times, 1,000 times what we actually thought the size of it was. And since actually being in that position, we've actually realized that it's beyond even what we thought was our actual niche. People have actually cottoned on. And this concept of cold pressed juice and cleansing actually went beyond our initial niche, right? So we were scratching our own itch. And then we found people who wanted their itch scratched as well and wanted to come to us for that product. So that's the very first thing I would do. I would say, look at what you're consuming, how you're consuming it. Can you find a solution or have a better solution to what's currently out there? And if you can, you've got a product. And I guarantee there'll be a lot of people out there who are having the same problem as you. So that's a great place to start. The second thing is actually finding a starving market. So this ties into, people have got the same problems as you. And so creating your own product, creating your own solution, obviously creates a market on its own, but using your unique selling points, your USPs and differentiations, that's where you'll be able to find your starving crowd, especially if you're starting from not much budget, if you're bootstrapping it, if you're even in concept phase. Finding these little niches is going to be so super important. Finding a starving crowd within a certain area or market is going to be the most important thing, especially if you in the beginning you actually can't find ways to differentiate yourself, and there's other big competitors out there. I mean, again, we weren't the first cold press juicing business. We weren't the first juicing business or beverage company, and yet we were thrown into that pool. And so we had to use our unique selling points less than 5% fructose in every cleanse, cold pressed juice cleansing, to hone in on a starving crowd that hated doing their own juice, making their own juice. It was too labor intensive, it was too expensive. Use a cold pressed juice machine at home and shoved it under the kitchen bench because they'd used it once and they didn't like it. That was our starving crowd, because they still wanted to do cold pressed juicing themselves at home, cleansing, but they didn't want to produce it. So there's our market. We thought it was, this big, but it was ginormous and continues to grow. So find your starving crowd, niche people like you. Smaller the better, because you're looking to go from 1 sale to 2 tomorrow, to 3 the next day, to 4, not from 0 to 100. That's not where you start. If you can't sell 1, there's no way you're going to get to 100. If you can't sell 1 to 10, you can't get to 100. So find your starving crowd, your niche market. Niche the better. That's how you differentiate yourself. The third thing is cash flow fund it. Okay, so we bootstrapped it ourselves. We put an allocation of cash in, which we bought a big machine for our big first investment to get the scale that we required after we had validation from our product. But by cash flow funding, we only really had to put a small portion towards our stock or our packaging, and then people basically paid up front, and then we could cash flow fund their produce and their delivery and all that sort of thing. So we were basically positively geared, so to speak, from the very beginning, apart from that initial investment, which we basically just wrote off. And so this is a really smart way to do it, because you don't over-capitalize on things. You don't waste unnecessary money. And we've seen this time and time again, where people have an allocation of cash, either from themselves or investors or partners, and they go and blow it on things such as digital marketing, such as Google ads, such as unnecessary things, big PR stunts. But if you don't have that cash in the beginning, or you have the mentality of scarcity around, utilizing every dollar to a T, then you're in a much better position to be able to have realistic growth expectations and not waste money. Of course, sit on the pool of cash and use it for very, very good opportunities where you can see that opportunity 10xing itself in terms of returns, such as our machine, such as a premises, such as some forms of advertising and marketing. That's what it's all about, right? And that's what it should be used for. But if you're cash flow funding your business for the beginning, or at least have the mentality of that, then that's where you will have the longevity. Okay, so arguably, it took us a good 12 months to get the wheels really, really turning. And then once, that had happened and we were hitting 10, 20, 30K a month, then there was the validation there, of course. But if we had spent all our money up front and done huge ads, we would burn out really quick, and our lifespan of the business would be dramatically reduced. And so what we've sort of found and what was observed is that entrepreneurship is about will, not necessarily knowledge. So the will to keep going, the will to find solutions, the will to persist is where businesses actually do survive, because they're savvy, they're cash flow conservative, or savvy. They don't make huge, big risk investments. They don't overpay contractors or advertising platforms or agencies unnecessarily. And they focus on the two things that matter most is your customer and your product. Finding the best combination of those things and servicing those two things in the best possible way you possibly can. All right. So there's 3 things that I would focus on if I was starting from scratch. Okay. A scratch your own itch product, a starving crowd being your niche, and it doesn't have to be huge. And number 3 is cash flow funding your project, right? So having the flexibility around that and being savvy so that you can grow from there. Once it's got legs, open the floodgates, put fuel on the fire with cash and advertising dollars and PR and everything, which is where we're at now. And it just absolutely explodes. All right, so there are 3 things. Really hope that helps. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out, but I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.